Greetings internet friends, AJ here from 8-Bit Horse, and today I'm going to tell you the story of the video game that ruined my mind. In my last video, I talked about my introduction to the survival horror genre with Silent Hill, and it's a game that scared the hell out of me when I first played it, but I eventually got the courage to make it all the way through to the end. It was kind of like riding my very first roller coaster, where I was completely terrified the entire time I was on it, and then, as soon as it was over, I immediately wanted to have that experience again. So, I played Silent Hill in 2000, and in the following year I started seeing magazine print ads for the sequel, Silent Hill 2. Now, you may have seen a scan of this advertising campaign. It was a 2-page ad, but if you've seen a scan, you might have seen the 2 pages side by side as if you opened up the magazine and on the left was one page and on the right was the other. In actuality, you had to turn the pages to see the entire ad. So page 1 is this sort of bloody handprint with the face of the main character shining through, and it says, "Wounds will heal, ... And then when you turn the page, you get the rest of the ad, and it says, "But your mind will be scarred forever." And it's basically just pictures of like the screenshots of the CG. There's only a couple actual gameplay screenshots down here in the bottom. But when I saw this, I was immediately drawn in by this premise. Wounds will heal, but your mind will be scarred forever. Like, the original game was really scary, and I was actually legitimately psyched about playing a game that was so scary that it might permanently damage my mind. And it turns out that was kind of true. I remember how on edge I was playing through the opening sequence of Silent Hill 2, just walking through the woods on my way into town. If you watch a YouTube video of someone playing Silent Hill 2, you probably just see them run through this opening area because there aren't any monsters, there's nothing that can hurt you, but I didn't know that the first time I played. One of the big changes with Silent Hill 2 over the original is the use of volumetric fog. The fog effect in the original game was mainly created by shortening the draw distance, so you couldn't see very far in front of your character. But with the power of the brand new PlayStation 2, they were able to create volumetric fog. So instead of just limiting your viewpoint, the fog took shape. I crept along in that opening area. I just moved slowly forward, a little at a time. I kept looking around, thinking that I could see something out of the corner of my eye, but then I'd look over and realize it's just a patch of fog floating by. And it doesn't help that there's some strange sounds, like stereoscopic sounds happening like kind of off in the woods, off the footpath. You know, this long, slow build-up into the town of Silent Hill was very much like the original game, where there's this growing anticipation and dread as you're getting further and further away from the safety of your car. You do have access to a map at the very beginning of the game, which lets you view the overall town of Silent Hill, but you notice that it's somehow completely different than it was in the original game. So you don't even have the comfort of revisiting a familiar location. It's doing what now? No, I feel fine. Feel fine. An element that really sells the horror of this game is the creature designs. Not only are they disturbing, like they're formed in uncomfortable ways, but they all have this gross, shiny, meaty quality to them. So you have these slick-looking flesh bag monsters that kind of stagger toward you, plus the mannequins, the nurses, and obviously Pyramid Head, all designed to be disturbing in a way that the PlayStation 1 could never have pulled off. This game came out on the PlayStation 2 before Final Fantasy X, before Metal Gear Solid 2, before Halo and the original Xbox were released. These were the most realistic graphics I had ever seen in my life. Of all things, the thing I found most disturbing were actually the character animations in the CG cutscenes. They were all just really disturbing, like really unsettling looking characters, and the way that they animated was unnatural. But not like unnatural in that, hey, the system can't quite pull off a realistic looking human. Just strange, just unsettling, otherworldly, with their teeth, the way they smiled, and their eyes. Even the characters that are supposed to be friendly, that treat you well during the game, are just unsettling. Like, you can't trust them. You're not supposed to trust them, but man, it just gives you that weird feeling. And especially when they introduce Eddie. Now, Eddie encapsulates this whole thing, right? There's something wrong with Eddie. And so his weird facial animations just go hand in hand with the reality that there's something off about him. But everybody feels off. Everybody feels like there's something a little wrong. There's no comfort when you're playing through a scary sequence and then a cutscene starts playing, because the cutscenes are just as scary as the regular game. And there's a lot of scenarios here where they kind of show you glimpses of things. Pyramid Head especially, right? You don't quite see everything up close and straight on. It's kind of at an angle, and you're coming around a corner, and there's this constant dread of, what am I going to encounter next? Like, what am I going to walk into this room and see this head on, or am I going to open a door? There's lots of situations where you're afraid to open a door and see what might be on the other side. And this is the part that stuck with me. This is the ruining my brain part of this thing. To this day, I have nightmares about I'm getting ready to open a door or go into a dark place, and I know that there's something terrible on the other side. There's something I don't want to see, and I'm trying to look away. I'm trying to stop myself, and I can't. These are nightmares that I've had for almost 20 years since I played this game. I've had nightmares this entire time. That's what I mean when I say the game has ruined my brain, has ruined my mind. Like, this, it was true, right? Wounds will heal, but your mind will be scarred forever. That is literally the case with this game. After I beat Silent Hill 2 one time, I put it away and I never played it again. I didn't try to go back and get all the endings like I did in the first game, although I don't think there are any good endings based on what I know of the main character. But the whole experience was just so much. It affected me so much that I couldn't bring myself to go back and play it, even though I kind of knew everything that was going to happen. And I've told many, many people in the ensuing years that this game is scarier than any horror movie I've ever watched. It's because everything's happening to you. You can't help but experience all of these dreadful, horrific things. And, it's not some other character. It is another character, but you're controlling that person. The stuff is happening to you. So it just personalizes that experience and gets you into that psychology of what this character's going through. Years later, I did end up going back and playing Silent Hill 3, which is the sequel to the original game. But I completely chickened out. I played this game with the lights on during the day. And as a result, I didn't have a really horrific experience. I didn't experience the horror of the game. And I understand that Silent Hill 2 is supposed to be the scariest one of the bunch, the best in the series. But I mainly just played this to get the rest of the story. I wasn't ready to kind of have that psychological horror like I had in Silent Hill. I did try going back and doing survival horror the right way, at night with the lights out with Fatal Frame. And this is a good one. I played for a while, and I did chicken out. I stopped playing this one. I want to go back and play this. I have Fatal Frame 1, 2, and 3, and I've only played part of Fatal Frame 1. So I want to go back and revisit this series. But yeah, I sound like I'm kind of a chicken when it comes to this stuff, because I love horror as a genre. I like horror movies, I like horror games, but, there's that permanent brain damage you gotta worry about. I played Amnesia. That's another one I really like the atmosphere on. And I only gave up on that game because I didn't care for the monster. I didn't like the fact that you could basically get caught and just immediately killed. I had the same kind of issue with Alien Isolation. Same thing, where it's you can run away and hide, but you can't really fight back, and you can die instantly. The one I played through more recently was Soma, which I started playing that game, and that game goes from normal, mundane, day-to-day stuff to, really scary in the span of just a few seconds. You're going about your day, and then all of a sudden, stuff comes unglued. So I stopped playing that when it got to the really crazy part. And I ended up going back after the developers released the safe mode, where you basically couldn't die. The monsters were still in there, but you couldn't get killed. And I played through the game that way. So I realized it probably wasn't as scary doing that. I really enjoyed the story to that game. I felt like the underlying story was horrific on its own, but the minute-to-minute stuff was a little less scary because I knew, I wasn't really in danger. These days when I'm looking to get my horror fix, I tend to focus on indie horror games that have graphics of roughly like the PlayStation 1 era. They're kind of like gritty, nasty, dirty experiences. Some of them are a little bit more realistic, but there's a lot of like PS1, like Resident Evil 1, Silent Hill 1 kind of themed games. And they all tend to focus around one major theme. And they also tend to be kind of short. So you can hop in and play a game and get from beginning to end in one sitting, which I really like. I love games that you can just sit down and go through. And with the horror stuff, like sometimes I'll play 2 or 3 of them just back to back and kind of like a vignette. Like you get a little taste of each horror experience. So that's a lot of what I play. There's dozens of these really excellent indie horror games out there. So how about it? Do you like playing survival horror games? And have you ever played a survival horror game that was just too much, that was too scary for you to keep going, or that just bothered you so much after you played it that it kind of stuck with you? Let me know down in the comments. And in the meantime, thank you for joining me for Story Time with the Old Man of Gaming, and we'll see you next time.